Hey guys, I'm Taz Thornton. I'm on 4G connection, so I don't know how long this will last. So I hope you're able to join me today. If you're watching this on replay, please do hit me a hashtag replay. This is a real quick one. I want to talk about coaching. I want to talk about some of the things we're taught about coaching. I want to talk about why sometimes we need to, if we're not going to completely ditch the rule book, we do at least need to be able to break the rule book. We need to be able to at least break the spine of that book. What am I talking about? Well, when we hear people talking about coaching, one of the most common debates people get into is what's the difference between coaching and mentoring. And there is a difference between coaching and mentoring, and it's important that people understand that. That's perhaps another discussion for another day. But also, I see a lot of people in coaching who have these processes they try to squeeze people into, and they try and keep things so clean and rigid and formulaic that, frankly, they're not serving themselves or their clients. One of the things that makes the best coaching experience and where we come up with the best coaching questions is actually deep and active listening. That doesn't mean that we have a list of provocative coaching questions. I've got some. I sent them to a client last week when she was asking for some. They can be great if we're starting off a conversation and we want things to pull out. But far better than having a list of provocative coaching questions is really exercising this and this and this and listening to people at a deeper level. That's where you're going to get the questions. That's where you're going to get the best results. And also, it's about knowing when is the right time to flex style. When is the right time to try and squeeze people and force people into a coaching formula that perhaps we've been taught? And when is the right time to perhaps be a little bit more human? So let me give you another, for instance. One of the things a lot of coaches are trained not to do is never to make it about them. And that's true. It's about the client. We are holding space. We're listening. We are helping the client to recognize their own potential, to recognize where it is they want to go to unleash their awesome. You know, I'm big on that one. But sometimes it can help the client to be able to relate to something. Sometimes it can help the client to be able to say, do you know, I once went through something similar to this. I can relate to this because this, and this is how I overcame it. If they get to that point where they think they're the only person in the world, there are a gazillion and one ways to burst that bubble for them. And sometimes it can be helpful for the client to just say, I can relate. Listen, this is what I did. And when you go into that, then you're slipping into mentoring a little bit more. And those people who have worked with me on coaching will know that right at the beginning, I will pre-frame that and say, look, sometimes this will be coaching. Sometimes it might go into mentoring a little bit. Sometimes it might venture into training, depending on what it is you need. Yesterday, I had one of those days where I was supporting so many people in various stages of not crisis per se, some were, but lots of people were having real wobbles yesterday. And if I had stuck rigidly to coaching technique, then honestly, at least one of them might not be here today. So yesterday morning, I was working with a client who was having a wobble and thinking that they weren't good enough. They couldn't get the technique. They were too far behind in a particular training program I'm working with them on. And we coached them through that and gave them some techniques and opened them up to a point where they thought, perhaps I can do it, but I've got some work to do there. And in that kind of situation, coaching questions can be great. So, for instance, if somebody tells you that this is going to be really hard, well, why do you believe it's going to be hard? Tell me a bit more about that. Let's focus on that. Let's focus not on the task as such, but why you are going into this with the belief that it's going to be hard. Because if you believe you're walking into this and it's going to be like, you know, Atlas carrying the globe forevermore, of course, you're probably going to make it hard for yourself. So tell me why you think it's going to be hard. So questions, they can work. Another situation I've been dealing with recently is supporting someone who has I hate this term because it's such an umbrella, but a mental health label, who has been off medication for a while, and now they're trying to get them back onto that and find some balance for them. And of course, sometimes when people are going through those kinds of situations, they can frankly be all over the place where the medics and the professionals are trying to get the balance right. So it's about knowing how to support and hold space there as well, without giving so much that that life means you can't be on call 24/7 for someone. So you've got to be able to find that barrier with holding from afar without becoming too much of a crutch. So there's that going on. I've been working with people who are stuck on their business growth. Had someone contact me yesterday morning in a bit of an anxiety state because clients had dried up and they were getting to the point where they weren't going to have money to cover their bills at the end of the month. And that's a different kind of technique. And in that way, we might need to go into mentoring. We might need to say, okay, first we'll go into flip it. First we'll go into active listening and then questioning, okay, why is this happening? What could you do? Instead of thinking, I can't do this, what are the ways? If you needed to come up to, in fact, the question asked was, if your life depended on it and you needed to come up with 300 quid by the end of today, and you needed to get that 300 quid out of potential clients who have money sitting and waiting to be paid to you for a job that you do, what could you do? And then what if it was £1,000? What if it was £1,500? Just get them thinking about it in a different way. But had that not worked, the next stage might have been going into some mentoring. It might have been, okay, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Which goes more into mentoring and training, depending on what they need. Not everyone will have the toolkit that you have. Sometimes as a coach, you will have a set of tools and a set of learnings and a set of skills that you've learned in building your coaching practice, which you might need to pass on to someone else, which goes more into the realms of mentoring. So in that case, yes, of course you can share some of your experiences, and that's not making it about you. It's using some of your experiences to genuinely support someone else. The important thing is that you've equipped them with the right questioning and the right direction to get them thinking in a different way first. So you're not, you give somebody the fishing net and teach them how to fish rather than just giving them, a bucket full of trout or whatever it is. But then let's take this to another level. I was supporting someone yesterday who, through all kinds of things in their own life and through lockdown, has ended up in a situation where yesterday they didn't actually want to be on the planet anymore. And I sat and I listened. And through that active listening and compassion and talking, I was able to get them to a point where they were able to have a coherent conversation. And by last night and again by this morning, they're still here. Now, yesterday morning, I genuinely feared this person might not be here. And through some of that conversation, I broke all the rules. And of course, that's not technically coaching. It's being in a supportive situation for someone. It's being in a supporting role for someone. But had I stuck to the coaching rule book, that person might not have been here by now. So, for instance, yes, of course, there was active listening and deep questioning and just holding space. But there was also, I can relate to that. This happened to me. This is how I got out of it. This is what I learned from it. If you look forwards, what do you think you might be able to learn from this? So that's just a nutshell, But I think sometimes we need to get back into humanity a lot more. I think sometimes coaching can feel so rigid when we follow a specific formula and we get so tied into what we should do and we shouldn't do that we're not serving ourselves deeply enough and we're not serving our clients deeply enough. And for me, and this has always been my way, if I get a deep instinct, a deep sense that something is going to help a client and they need that, I'm not going to let any rule book tell me not to do it. A lot of the coaching I do is intuitive. A lot of it strays into mentoring. A lot of it then goes into the realms of training. And I think we all need to think about that. The rule book is there to remind us that we need to keep clean, clear boundaries. We're not the coachees or mentees' friend. We are there to help them to get to a better point in their life, to keep growing, to keep unleashing that awesome, to realize that they have a really important role to play in this world and the world needs them in it sometimes. The rule book is there as a guide. The rule book is there to remind us that we need to keep clean, clear boundaries. We need to recognize that we cannot rescue. The rule book is there to remind us of the drama triangle, to help us recognize when a client is in it as well. The rule book is there to remind us that we need to keep the energy clean and bright. The rule book is there to remind us that we are not their friend, we are their coach, we are their advisor, we are their guide, we are their questioner, we are their listener, we are their space holder. That's what the rule book is for. But anything outside of that, the rule book can go for me. So again, I don't think we want to ditch the rule book entirely. I don't think we need to break all the rules, but I do think we at least need to break the spine of that rule book and take the stick from out of our backsides and recognize that whether we think we are B2B or B2C, it's all H2H. It's all human to human. So hold your barriers, keep your barriers clean, make sure you know what you're doing, make sure you listen. And if you're having a conversation with a coaching client and you've no idea where that conversation is going, that's okay. The amount of coaches who come to me and say, sometimes I have these conversations, I don't know where it's going, and that scares me. You don't always need to know where a conversation is going, but you need to be able to trust in the process, and you need to be able to trust in yourself to sometimes bend the rules a little bit for the good of you, for the good of your client, and for the good of all that is. I hope that helps. And one more thing before I go. Here's another thing that we're sometimes told as coaches, that if we hold our space well enough, we should never be affected by anything that we hear. We should never take on board our clients' issues. We should be able to be just happy and bouncy and jolly at the end of it. Let me tell you, I've just come out of holding space on a 4-day training and coaching retreat. And then yesterday I went into a day where I was dealing with a lot of meltdowny stuff, a lot of challenging situations for a lot of people. And yesterday, because of lockdown, where I've had to juggle dates and move things about, I didn't have the time. Usually if I'm running a retreat, whether it's a weekend, a 4-day, anything like that, I always block myself out a couple of days afterwards. And this time, because of the way events have had to be moved because of lockdown, I did not have the diary capacity to give myself downtime afterwards. And so what I can tell you is, despite having all the tools in the book, despite having certificates coming out my armpits, and despite me having lots of tools and techniques to change my state and to stay in balance and to stay in flow, by the time last night came, I felt vulnerable, I felt porous, I felt, frankly, a bit of a wreck. And I wouldn't change anything about the work that I do and the people that I support and how I'm able to help people. But what I can tell you is that if anyone tells you that as a coach or as anyone supporting other people, you shouldn't feel things or shouldn't ever take things on board, it's bullshit, because you are human. And yesterday, after 4 days of supporting people and holding space, and then a day of everything from people not believing in themselves to this issue to dropping your phone holder in the car, to talking someone essentially off a ledge, I was not in. I felt vulnerable. And when I woke up this morning, I still felt vulnerable, and I allowed some tears to come. And that's okay too. So give yourself a break, people. Sometimes the rule book isn't right. Sometimes the rule book is there just as a guide. And so long as you are not actually absorbing the issues of the people that you're working with, it is utterly, utterly human to sometimes get to the end of an emotionally high, a period of time that's thick with emotion, where you're holding space for people. It is entirely and expected and normal for you to feel a bit drained and for you to need to take a few steps back. It's one of the reasons I'm in my gym gear today, because I needed to go to the gym and work some stuff out and shift my state, and I've done that very well, thank you very much, and I highly recommend it. So I hope that's helped. I hope that's perhaps allayed some fears or helped you perhaps feel a bit better about your coaching technique, for those of you who are in the business of supporting others. If you have any questions or comments, then please do ask. I'll always do my best to come back to you, and it is always me if I come back to you. If it's ever my support team replying, it will always say Team Taz. But yeah, that's part of my value set. I'll reply where I can. I hope that's helped. Rulebook's there for guidelines. Rulebooks is there to remind us to keep clean, clear barriers. But remember that you're human as well, and so are the people that you're working with. Take care, lots of love.